Gupta. He's a senior Asia-Pacific international relations specialist at the Institute for China-America Studies. Why don't we start there? Because you and I have talked about this, the border dispute, and of course the drone incident she referred to. Where do you see China-India relations today vis-a-vis back then?
Obviously, if there is an issue on the border and there's actual physical tension on the border, that seeps into the relationship. But it also cuts two ways. The point is that many of these incidents in the border happen when there is a deterioration in the overall bilateral relationship. And that's why it's important to safeguard that. There are other extraneous issues in the relationship, terrorism-related, Tibet-related, which have entered in the relationship and cast a pall over the relationship. And that you see manifested in the border dispute. Both sides are very conscious in trying to control it, and that's why we see stability on the border right now.
Trilateral relations, trilateral cooperation. Talk to me about where we're at there and how important that is.
It is very, very important. They have actually, these three countries have met 15 times in this Russia-India-China trilateral format. Many of these bilateral relationships are actually very, very good. Russia-India, Russia-China, some of these relationships are very good. The problem arises in places like China and India, which don't have a good relationship or are having difficulty in their relationship at this point of time. And what this trilateral mechanism and other plurilateral and multilateral organization events like BRICS and SCO does is kind of embed the countries within a context which is more cooperative rather than just combative in a bilateral context. So sometimes multilateral relations or these plurilateral relationships help to sort of soften and cushion the blow that when bilateral relationships are not shaping up that well.
Any gains for China as a result of this meeting? You see?
Absolutely, I would say so. For China, it's very important, not just for China, I would say even for Russia and for India. The most important things that it needs to get going is to have good relationships with the big major countries, major powers in the world. As Xi Jinping himself says, major power relations is very important. It's also very important to have good relations with your neighbors. It just happens that these major countries also happen to be your neighbors. And so this is a great format in which you can improve, you can stabilize ties, which is very, very important, I think, from China's perspective.
There is instability in the region, though. We know that, the DPRK. How does that factor into their meeting, and how do you address that issue?
The DPRK issue is obviously a very complicated issue, and it gets more complicated by bringing more players in there. This particular meeting has, by and large, stayed away from the DPRK issue. That is being handled in great detail by Russia and China and by the other stakeholders involved out there. That having been said, separate from this trilateral format, there is, from this foreign ministers format, there is also a trilateral meeting with these three foreign ministers, actually, which is to deal specifically with Asia-Pacific issues. They had their last meeting in December 2016. They're going to have a meeting again in the first half of next year. And they are beginning to have converging views of Asia-Pacific strategic stability. So it's not specifically Korean Peninsula related, but I think they're looking at it from a macro Indo-Pacific context, if need be.
Yeah, we'll have to watch for that. Sourabh Gupta, always a pleasure having you on for analysis. Thank you again.